First to Canberra and the mining tax. This morning, Prime Minister Gillard announced that a deal had been negotiated with the mining industry over the controversial super profits tax. It's had a name change and will be slashed to 30%. Miners and unions have welcomed the deal, but there's still a lot of work to be done. Here's Connor Duffy with the details.
The government remains fully committed to a resource super profits tax.
I am deeply, profoundly hostile to the idea of a great big new tax.
Weaken mining, you weaken the country. But that's exactly what the government's new super tax is doing.
And I'm pleased to report to the Australian people that today we have a breakthrough agreement.
The tax battle that helped topple a Prime Minister and had some of the biggest companies in the world in open warfare with the Australian government is over. Champagne was wheeled through the halls of power last night as the government and the mining chiefs sealed a deal that was hailed by both sides this morning.
It moves things forward, whether you're a coal miner in the Bowen Basin, a contractor in Karratha, an opal miner in Cooper Pedy, or a young worker in Sydney.
This is a positive outcome for Australia and the Australian minerals industry.
The next election is a referendum on tax. Labor supports a great big new tax on mining. The Coalition doesn't. As simple as that.
Kevin Rudd's resource super profits tax is dead. In its place, Julia Gillard's minerals resource rent tax, or MRRT. It delivers some big wins to the miners and applies only to iron ore and coal companies whose annual profits exceed $50 million. It's only levied when profits reach 7% above the government bond rate, meaning the new threshold is 12%, not the original 5%. Just weeks ago, the Treasurer was insisting the rate of the tax was not negotiable.
We have said that we want a 40% rate. We are committed to a 40% rate.
Today, that rate was lowered to 30%, though the Minerals Council has advised its members that when other concessions are included, the effective tax rate is nearer to 20%.
I see this as progress and a move forward into space that is about tax reform, that the package brings us broadly in line with an internationally competitive tax profile.
For business to flourish, competitive tax rates are essential. It's also essential we have stable and coherent government.
The petroleum resources rent tax will also be extended to all onshore oil and gas projects, including coal seam gas. All up, the compromise has a hefty price tag, $1.5 billion. Though when it kicks in 2012, it'll still net the government $10.5 billion in the first 2 years. Plans for a company tax cut have been reduced from 2% to 1%, meaning the rate will hit 29 cents in 2013.
So essentially, we're down by $1.5 billion and we've made up with that in saves.
Both Julia Gillard and the mining industry say the deal could not have been struck by Kevin Rudd, and these two recent enemies were united in distancing themselves from the former leader.
I have deliberately brought a new approach to working on this tax, and that new approach has seen us make the breakthrough agreement that we made last night, which now gives us the ability for people to work together and to keep going forward.
Process and policy was what bedeviled us, and process and policy has improved.
I think it's fair to say that her intervention changed the tone of this debate and has led to this breakthrough.
The opposition is sticking to its vow to scrap the tax if it wins the election, leaving the miners the prospect of an even better deal.
We're in the position we're in because the government has trashed Australia's international reputation with its proposal for a great big new tax on mining. And you do not restore the situation by turning a $12 billion tax into a $10.5 billion tax.
For the past 2 months, Tony Abbott has used the RSPT to bludgeon the government. It remains to be seen if the argument has the same potency with the big miners supporting the deal.
The miners were effectively negotiating with a gun at their heads, and That's not a situation that they should ever have been put into.
Tony Abbott still enjoys the support of the smaller mining companies, which stated their opposition to the new tax even before it had been announced.
Obviously, we represent over 220 members who are focused on mineral exploration and mining here in Western Australia, and we would have liked to have been involved in the process.
Mining analyst Gavin Wendt is also concerned that the tax will be extended to other resources in the future.
Down the track, there's every chance that this tax isn't going to be just narrowly applied to iron ore and to coal. It's going to be applied to a much broader range of commodities. It's intriguing that in Queensland, for example, you've got coal now going to be taxed, whereas the world's biggest silver mine in Cannington isn't going to be taxed. You're going to have Olympic Dam in South Australia, which is the world's biggest uranium deposit, one of the biggest copper mines in the world. It's not going to fall under taxation.
There are plenty of details still to be worked out about the resources the tax will apply to, and legislation won't hit the Parliament this year. That means after the next election, and speculation that the poll's fast approaching has redoubled after today's announcement. However, the Prime Minister's office has made it clear Julia Gillard intends to act on asylum seekers and climate change before the poll, meaning there's more to be done before she takes that drive to Yarralumla.
Connor Duffy reporting.